Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the first meeting of 2021 of the Downtown Parking Committee, January 14th, 2021. We're glad you're able to join us today. Unfortunately, virtually, but we're doing the best we can to reach out to the community this way. If I could have the roll call, please.
As I call your name, please turn on your webcam and audio when you respond. Sean Pratt, excused. Ed France.
Here.
Ruben Zarate.
Here.
Andrew Newkirk.
Here.
Barbara Silver.
Here.
Matt Labrie.
Here.
And Chair Pinner.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any changes to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair, there are no changes to the agenda, but I do want to announce to you, you probably already saw them flash up, but if they bring up their screens, we have two new Downtown Parking Committee members, Ruben Zarate and Barbara Silver, and we got them sworn in yesterday virtually. So they're all sworn in and ready to go. We haven't been able to spend a lot of time with them ahead, so be gracious. They're going to be learning, and but we welcome you and we thank you for your participation in city government and specifically on the Downtown Parking Committee. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, let me extend my welcome to as well to Ruben and Barbara. Thank you. We will spend some time over the next month updating you on some of our programs and projects and history that will help you continue and grow to be an effective member of this committee. So we look forward to that opportunity and your participation and helpfulness in our city's parking and downtown plaza operations. So thank you very much. At this time, we'll move to item number 4 on the agenda, which is public comment. This is the opportunity when any member of the public wishes to address this committee on a topic or in the jurisdiction of our committee, but not currently on today's agenda. Do we have any public speakers today?
Right now, I'm not seeing any raised hands, but as a reminder to any members of the public who may be watching, if you'd like to make a public comment, use the raise lower your hand button in the GoToWebinar program. You'll see that that's a little hand-shaped button with a green arrow to raise that hand. And we'll see that and we'll call on you. So I don't see any raised hands right now, but if anybody'd like to participate, that's how we'll do it going forward.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we will close public comment and move to item number 5, approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of December 10th, 2020. I will entertain a motion.
Andy, go ahead.
Mr. France.
I'll move approval of the minutes.
So I
And I'll
have a
second.
first from Mr. Newkirk and a second from Mr. France. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll call for the roll call, please.
Ed France.
Yes.
Mr. Newkirk.
Yes.
Mr. Labrie.
Yes.
And Chair Pinner.
Yes.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
and staff, Mr. Dayton, maybe you can clarify, but I believe members who were not in attendance can still vote to approve minutes. And I don't know if our new members are participating or if that would be appropriate to point that out.
Yeah, they can. You don't have to be at the meeting to approve the minutes.
Okay, Ruben Zarate,
Yes.
and Barbara Silver.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Labrie. We have approval of the minutes, and that brings us to item number 6, parking operations revenue and expenditures updates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're going to have Sarah Clark do this presentation. But before we do, I just want to note that the major shift that we're seeing right now from last time, and Sarah's going to walk you through this, it's going to be repetitive, but that's good, is that we were starting to get back on our feet financially, making adjustments to make it happen. Having the restaurants open really helped business for downtown parking and the amount of revenue that was coming in. And then when the governor's orders hit 3 weeks before Christmas to close, that's when we saw a big decline. So you're going to see that in Sarah's presentation. And then Victor Garza is going to be coming after Sarah, just to give you a little idea of the things we're doing to make adjustments as our revenue stream is going down. So take it away, Ms. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Dayton. So if we can go ahead to the next slide. As Mr. Dayton mentioned, with the big surge of virus cases that we're seeing and the additional closures that have resulted from that, particularly the restaurant closures in the downtown area, we've seen a pretty big drop in traffic. Obviously, throughout the year, we've been lower than we would normally be in a normal year. Here's an overview of our December occupancy. For the people who are new to the committee, we take a look at these every month, so they're always sort of in a standard format. If you look at the green bars right here, that is December of 2018. This is our occupancy throughout the day on the different days of the week across all of our lots. And then the blue is 2019. So you see not really much change in between those 2 years. So those are what we would call standard years or normal years. And then the orange is where we are right now. So as you can tell, our peak occupancy and our occupancy in general is significantly lower than it would be in a normal year. And lower certainly from November prior to the new closures to December. So if we want to go ahead to the next slide, you'll see correspondingly, this is our hourly revenue at our lots. That is also down in a standard year, and the colors are the same here. So green is 2018 and blue is 2019. Standard year, we'd be taking in a bit over around $420,000 for the month of December, whereas this past December, we only took in about $100,000 at the gate. So we can go ahead to the next slide. So overall, that is, excuse me, I just closed out of my webinar. Overall, our revenues obviously are down considerably because of that. So in a more normal December, for example, December of last year, we took in about $776,000. We budgeted, assuming that we'd be down about 25% this year at this point, to take in about $587,000 for this month, but unfortunately we only took in about $309,000. Our expenditures, we're continuing to try to realize savings where we can, but we did end up spending about $695,000 this month. So overall, for our operating fund, we came in at a $386,000 deficit for this month. So if we want to go ahead and move to the next slide, please. And so this is that graph that we've been tracking month to month that shows in green where our total revenues are, in blue where our total expenditures are, and in red what that operating net is. So as you can see, for October and November, those blue and green bars were getting closer and closer together, and as a consequence, that red bar was getting closer to zero, so we were getting back towards breaking even operationally. Unfortunately, again, that has taken a turn with the changes that we've had to make in response to the additional closures, which has involved, again, scaling back staffing. We've gone from taking in usually about prior to the new closures, we were bringing in on a weekday around $3,000 to $4,000 usually, and then with the expanded shifts that we had added on the weekends, we were able to bring that up to anywhere between $6,000 and $8,000 on Friday, Saturday, and sometimes Sunday. Now we're taking in between usually $2,000 and $3,000 a day, and we've had to reduce that nighttime staffing. So Victor, I think, can give some more details on those operational changes, but that's where we're standing for December.
Okay, do we have any questions? Or Victor, you're going to give us some additional?
Well, I can wait for questions, or I can just kind of finish up what Sarah had. Where she dropped.
Go ahead, Victor.
Why don't you go ahead, Victor?
All right, so for the benefit of those that, for our new members, Ruben and Barbara, finishing up what Sarah said, we had closed the lots in March 18 of 2020, and then we reopened them again in June of 2020, and then of course the other shutdown happened December 6th. But during that time, we've been exploring ways to reduce our staffing costs, to reduce all kinds of other operational and maintenance related costs. We've been working with our revenue control vendor, our supplier SCADATA, to employ the latest technologies, including license plate recognition systems, mobile pay apps, encouraging the use of prepaid cards and permits and other technologies so that we could optimize our revenue collection efforts and also continue to reduce our staffing costs. So far, we've been pretty successful training our customers to employ contactless types of transactions. In the future, those kinds of transactions will be able to be processed most of the time, hopefully all the time, without any staffing in the kiosks at all. And that'll greatly improve our outlook in the months to come. That's pretty much what I wanted to add on to what Sarah said. We're open for any questions.
Thank you, Victor and Sarah, for that. Do we have any questions from the committee of staff? Mr. Newcomb.
I have a question. Am I on? No, there I am. So my question is, which lots now are fully automatic, or are there any?
At this time, we have not yet automated any of our lots. So right now we're still continuing to staff the lots. However, we have moved towards a credit card preferred model where we have the operator out near the the column and encouraging people to use their credit card to pay at the column on the way out, as opposed to paying as they would in the kiosk normally with cash. So that's where we're at right now. We're moving the first phase of SKIDATA upgrades is underway, and that is going to give us another contactless payment option. It's going to introduce the option for mobile pay, where you use.
I knew it was coming. I just didn't know if it was here someplace.
Yeah, so the first phase is underway. We're working on getting that up to date, which is just upgrades to our operating system, upgrades to the equipment that we have at the column, which will allow people to use their phone like Apple Pay or Google Pay to pay on the way out. So it'll provide another contactless option. And then we're going to be moving next year into the deployment of some license plate recognition software, or software and hardware, which will allow additional automated payment options.
Okay, I need to learn how to use those pay for phone apps, because I never have before, and I need to see how things work because I have a really little car and it's sometimes hard to reach the equipment in places. So I just wanted to try it out when it first got underway. Thank you.
Yes, and we will keep the committee up to date as those proceed.
Thank you.
No problem.
Mr. Newkirk, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Penner. Sarah, I apologize if you mentioned this, but what was the cause for the increase in expenditures in December?
The expenditures from month to month can be a little bit uneven sometimes because just the way that different payments hit. I'm not recalling any major expenditures for December. However, I think some things just kind of hit a little differently. If the charge posts in one month versus another month, just sometimes it's just not that evenly spaced. So that's why you kind of see it fluctuating, but we didn't have any large new appropriations for the month of December.
And then the other question is, thinking back to the conversation about the CIPs and looking out like 3 to 5 years, and kind of how we're going to get back into a kind of a better financial position. Kind of thinking that January, I would assume the revenues are going to be, lower than desired again, and imagine, February too. Is there any point where we're going to need to look again at those kind of midterm projections and reassess, CIPs or other, like really getting ahead on other ways that we can increase revenues or decrease expenditures? I know there's not much more to decrease in expenditures, but that's, if this continues, and it looks like it will for at least a little while longer, when do we start thinking about that?
Well, let me jump in on that. And so regarding the CIP, Committee Member Newkirk, we are operating with a bare bones CIP that is simply funding the larger expenditures related to maintenance. There are no real projects planned forward in the next few years because we don't expect the revenues, net revenues from our operations to generate the kinds of funds needed to fund the kind of capital that we know we need, including a lot of the deferred maintenance. So I hope that answers your question. Right now, our focus is on trying to reduce that negative net revenue impact, and then just barely maintain the lots with the small amount of revenue that we have.
And I would just add to that that we are currently going through a 2-year budget process. Right now, we're budgeting for fiscal year 22 and 23, and we'll be bringing that proposed budget and having that big discussion with the committee probably next month. So that will be coming up soon, and we'll be having that larger discussion about what our financials look like at mid-year and what we're projecting out for the remainder of the year as well as the following 2 years. So.
Mr. Zarate.
Hi, I just had a question. In what ways are we trying to increase revenue? Like in what ways other than just being a parking lot are we actively trying to fix our situation?
Well, the way to increase the revenue, Committee Member Zarate, is to be able to either increase the number of customers, paying customers, or to increase the operating hours. At this time, and apologize I didn't say it before, but a couple of years ago, the committee had approved in the fee resolution that council approves to have the hourly rates in effect all day. In other words, 24/7. So the downtown parking program has the ability to collect revenue for those that are staying in the lots at any time during the day. The problem is being able to actually collect the revenue, and that means paying for staffing to make that effort. And at this time, the numbers are just not there to justify that expense. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I just had this thought with, sorry, I don't know, I don't mean to go off, but like, you can pay with your credit card on the outside column. Wouldn't you be able to just close the lots but keep it running and just have everyone use their credit card at the end as they leave through the outside column?
That's the goal. You're right on target with that thinking. That's the goal. And so we're as you can see with the signage, we're encouraging the customers to do exactly that. Insert their ticket If there's a fee due, then they insert their credit card. And the numbers, the percentage of the customers that are actually being able to do that are going up. So the goal is to have 100% contactless credit card based transactions.
Okay, thank you. That's my questions.
If I may follow up on that, Victor, for clarification, the difficulty we have now is if we were having someone to try to pay by credit card and there was an issue or problem, we have no way of really dealing with that at this point. Am I correct?
At this point, Chair Pinner, we have the operator in the kiosk. So so right now we're there in order to assist with the customer training of that. When we go to the staffless model, there will be an intercom button that will allow the customer to contact the office if there's a problem.
I guess I should have clarified. Right now, the reason we have the kiosk staff attended is because we have no ability to help someone exit if they're not getting out correctly. So
that's right. Two reasons for that. Another one, as committee member Zarate was saying, we're trying to train the customers, and the other part is safety. We're really trying to reduce the amount of actual contact between the customers and our staff.
Understood. Okay, at this time, I'd like to, unless we have other questions of staff, which we can still do, I'm also prepared to open up public comment.
Okay, Chair Pinner, I don't see any hands raised. If any member of the public would like to speak on this item, go ahead and use the raise your hand button and go to webinar right now. Okay, and I don't see anybody raising their hands for public comment.
All right, we'll close public comment on number 6. Are there any other questions from the committee of staff? Well,
and I have, Mr. Chair, I have one more comment. Thanks, Sarah, for that detailed report. She puts in a lot of time putting in all those numbers and making those estimates and projections. And of course, we all review those before we present them to the committee. And thank you so much for that, Sarah. And for the new members, if you have any more questions, because that was a big data dump. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact Rob or me at any time if you need any further explanation, and we'd be happy to provide that.
Thank you. I think I would say too, Mr. France, you have a comment.
Thank you, Chair Pinner. I just want to appreciate Victor and Sarah, you for your presentation and all of your careful management. I think this year is going to be really important. Our finance subcommittee meetings and all of our creative thinking for financial planning, and also for our committee to just continue to support the really significant moves of downtown parking for self-sufficiency, such as the credit card and license plate recognition software. And that's going to be pretty crucial for allowing us flexibility ahead.
Thank you, Mr. France. I was writing down a note, so you must have been looking at my notes. I don't know how you do that from your camera, but I was going to comment that the finance subcommittee is looking to get reactive and engaged in sort of these issues as well. So we hope to have future meetings on that to maybe help just dig as deep as we can into these things if necessary and report back to the committee. I also wanted to highlight, as Mr. Dayton was saying at the beginning, this is a little bit of a repeat, or unfortunately similar information as when things shut down the first time. So we understand a little bit of this is completely out of our control, and we're just doing the best we can to mitigate the damages. And I appreciate staff and all the team that are doing that and working hard to just keep us as little negative as possible. It's such a bad way of saying it, but that is what we are doing, just like so many other businesses of downtown, or not just downtown, but so many other businesses, period. Mr. Dayton.
Oh, just as we wrap up, I just thank you for the staff appreciation. I do want to acknowledge Roy Forney and Dion Tate, who are not always on the call, and all the members of the downtown parking team are really focused on righting the ship. And as was alluded to, as Victor talked about, the license plate recognition is moving forward, and we're working out the bugs. So we have all our eyes, or all hands on deck, set on righting the ship. And so it's going to be a long view. We don't know when COVID is going to end and when restaurants will come back, which is the primary customer these days for us in downtown parking. But we have a plan and we're moving forward. We will be bringing that to you, as was mentioned in future meetings, so that you're updated on that as well.
Thank you very much. With no other questions or comments at this time, I think we'll move to item number 7, Downtown Plaza activity updates. And is that you, Mr. Dayton?
Well, it's going to be Victor's he's going to be doing the hard work, but I just want to give you a little bit of an intro. Just like the last item, this item is a we're regularly doing this as we go through COVID to bring you what is in play now. We've been flexible and nimble to continually change how we're doing things to adjust to serve the businesses, which is in our mission statement and the committee's mission statement. Victor's going to walk you through some of those Plaza activities and what happened. We had a storm event, which was a real concern, but then a real-time experience of what we can expect with Parklet. So he's going to tell you about some of those adjustments. And if need be, I'll come back and add a little bit more. So thank you, Mr. Garza.
Thank you, Mr. Dayton. And for the edification of committee members Zarate and Silver, I wanted to start off by saying that up till a couple of years ago, the downtown parking program's focus was on the operations and maintenance of the 5 garages and the 7 surface parking lots. With the creation of the promenade, and in conjunction with the assumption of the maintenance responsibilities in the downtown plaza, in other words, State Street from Victoria down to Cabrillo Boulevard, downtown parking now oversees the maintenance, the sidewalk power washing, the landscape maintenance, and the litter cleanup that happens every single day of the year. So a big thank you to Roy Forney and Dion Tate for all their teamwork, all the staff's efforts to coordinate and oversee and actually perform a lot of that maintenance. The maintenance has been made much more difficult with the installation of the expanded dining areas, but we have been creative and been able to figure out ways with different kinds of equipment and scheduling the contractors in different ways and using our own staff to be able to keep the promenade in a very clean condition. And along with that, staff has also been assisting downtown Santa Barbara with the Thursday markets. We've been assisting the farmers market with their Tuesday market on State Street, assisting them with traffic control, with the access to the electrical outlets, making sure that they always have power. We've been working with the merchants with their needs for outdoor lighting. We've installed the holiday lighting, which is the Christmas tree lighting that we wrap around the trees. We've installed with contractors, we've installed string lighting crossing the streets. We've started working with contractors to install the terracotta looking pots that we're now planting. We've hired a contractor, hopefully it'll be working start of February, maybe mid-February, to install additional traffic control. All those efforts have been part of the interim phase of the promenade, where we've gone from the kind of construction-y kind of look to more of a more aesthetically pleasing look. The pots working with our traffic engineering staff, we place them in such a way that they safely control the traffic, but also lend a much more aesthetically pleasing atmosphere on the promenade. We've been working with the bike share, the folks, the B-Cycle people, along with our other transportation planning staff to install bike share racks for electric bikes. We've, let's see, what else have we got going? We've also been working closely, like I said, with downtown Santa Barbara with day-to-day issues. As Mr. Dayton suggested, or as he mentioned, we experienced a pretty significant rain event. We've been working with the businesses to make sure that their structures in their expanded dining areas don't block the storm flow in such a way that they cause damage to others. We were pleasantly surprised with this last storm event that there was very, very minimal blockage happening. Most of the water that hit the structures simply went around them. So I was pleased to see that happen, although we are working with some of the businesses that have the structures in the actual gutter lines to get them to provide more room for the storm flow to pass through their structures. And that pretty much sums up what we've been doing. Mr. Dayton can fill in some more information, or we can be open to questions.
Mr. Dayton, did you have anything to add? Well, since he may not be able to get on right this minute, I will ask for any
No,
questions.
Mr. Chair, Victor covered it perfectly.
Thank
So,
you.
so I have a question. All of the,
Barbara, one sec. To make it easier, when you come on, I'll recognize you so we
yeah,
don't talk.
sorry about that.
That's okay. Go ahead, Mrs. Silver.
So my question is, all of the extra expenses for all of that extra work, where does that show up, or does that show up in the charts that Sarah showed us?
That's a great question, Committee Member Silver.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yes. So, well, it's a question that we've covered before with the committee, but it was something I omitted when trying to give you the background. So the projects that we've been talking about, the planter project, the traffic control, and the lighting have all been funded through Measure C. The other maintenance efforts that I mentioned before, the landscape maintenance, the power washing, all of that was the result of a cost savings that we experienced by consolidating what was previously funded by downtown Santa Barbara. Actually, they were downtown parking funds that were administered by downtown Santa Barbara. We took those funds back and created a larger maintenance contract program, consolidating the maintenance efforts in the parking facilities and the plaza, realized the cost savings, and then we're able to perform that work under our supervision.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're muted, Trey.
Sorry, I usually just leave it on, and then I was making noise with some paper here, so apologize for that. Are there any other questions of the committee of staff regarding downtown plaza activities?
Mr. Chair, I also wanted to add that in addition to the maintenance on the plaza being more difficult because of the presence of the structures, I also wanted to mention that the efforts of the ambassadors and because the ambassador team, the red shirted staff that people see walking up and down the street, work under the supervision of Roy Forney and his staff, and they do a tremendous job of trying to direct services to the homeless folks which we've noticed a significant uptick in their presence and their behavior on the plaza. So that has been a big work effort of ours. We're hoping that with the newly appointed officer to work directly on State Street, that we'll be able to coordinate our efforts in a more efficient way.
Thank you. You actually addressed what my question was going to be is, what are we experiencing sort of with the parklets and all the structures that we have downtown not being used like they were? You know, they were actively being used. Now they're sort of, it's unfortunate. It's like having a bunch of little boarded up businesses because, you know, they're not being used, and how that was being impacted by people hanging around downtown at night. Are they using these areas as places of shelter? How are we addressing that?
That's a great question, Mr. Chair, and that was brought to our attention right from day one. And of course, the ambassador staff also anticipated that question and have been closely monitoring the activity in the expanded dining areas and the parklets, and we've not gotten any complaints about it. And I think it's because we've been proactive. And the homeless folks tend to gather in more secluded places. They don't like to be out where they are seen by everybody.
Thank you for that. Any other members of the committee wishing to address the staff or have questions on this? Mr. France.
Chair Pinner, or can I share a comment?
Please go ahead.
I just want to appreciate staff, Victor, all of your team for the support for the bike share program, and also to Rob and all of the transportation staff for helping navigate the Byzantine maze of various committees that feel that they have you know, oversight of everything on our streets. This is like 20 years in coming, and how interesting that in the middle of the pandemic, we're finally launching a bike share program for the city. I think that this is going to be probably a tricky time to start, but this is going to be a long-term significant benefit for access to our downtown core and city connectivity. So I just want to laud that launch. It's really cool to start to see some of those bikes actually getting on the street just over this past week.
Thank you, committee member France. Committee member Zarate, you have a comment or question?
Yeah, I have a comment, a question. I saw yesterday online, they were talking about the upkeep of these new plotters downtown, and a company from Van Nuys has placed a bid on. Is that something we're doing as well? Like, is there any? I just saw the post, so I'm not sure if there's any validity to it. But is that true? How does that work? And if so, is there a local company we could do that with instead?
That's a great question, Committee Member Zarate. As a matter of fact, my lovely wife made the same comment to me. Why are you hiring somebody from out of the area to do this work? And so I very politely answered by saying that it was a competitive bid. All of our projects are bid just like all the other city public works projects are bid, or maintenance and repair, where every company that is licensed, that is qualified, has the experience to do the work, can submit a bid, and we are obligated to take the lowest responsible bid. And in this case, I can't remember if there were any local companies that actually bid on it. In order to do work for the city, a company has to have a track record, they have to have the experience, they have to have the capital, they have to have the staff, and they have to have the ability, in other words, the time in their schedule. Sometimes contractors are just very busy and can't do the work. And so we do get companies from out of the area that do submit competitive bids and do a great job. So there was no effort to exclude or pre-qualify any bidders. They were all welcome to bid, and the result was that this company that I think they're based out of Valencia, I think, but they're doing a very good job, and I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, or at least at this moment, no questions, I will ask for Sarah to open up the public comment for item number 7.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to add one more thing regarding the promenade and the questions about just what we're doing out there. The businesses that construct or that expand their dining areas onto the street have to follow the city's guidelines. And there are many aspects, many details in the guidelines that speak to accessibility, to storm flow, to aesthetics, to fire safety. And those guidelines are always being updated to reflect the current concerns. And our downtown parking staff monitors those expanded dining areas almost daily. And we also respond as quickly as we can to any complaints regarding any apparent violations of the guidelines. Everything from tables and chairs that are crowding the sidewalks to tables and chairs that are crowding the fire lane in the center of the street, or anything that doesn't appear to be a normal business activity. And so I just wanted to conclude my presentation by saying that it's not just the Wild West out there. We're striking that balance where we're assisting and facilitating the businesses to try to stay in business by using the public right of way, but then also trying to give them some guidance so that they do it safely and in an aesthetic way.
Great, thank you very much, Victor. Sarah, if you could open up public comment, please.
Sure thing. Any member of the public who wishes to speak, go ahead and use the raise your hand button in the GoToWebinar platform. And I am not seeing any hands raised.
Great, thank you very much. So I will public comment on item number 7. I just want to, as I think we're doing a lot today, is thanking staff, as we should be every day. Again, a lot of extra work and observations and goals and needs to deal with through this pandemic time and second closure, which makes it very difficult. So we just appreciate the flexibility, fluidity that staff is addressing things, keeping things as safe as possible, but trying to, reach a goal of helping businesses out, which is what this is about.
That's really what it's all about, Mr. Chair. And again, for the edification of our 2 newest committee members, what's good for the downtown plaza is good for downtown parking. The better we're able to serve the businesses to help them be successful translates to a successful downtown parking program. So it's a team effort, and that's why we're there.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Ms. Silver.
So I have a question then, Victor. Are there outstanding requests from businesses that we're not able to meet? You said we're there to support their needs, and I was just curious if there are any things they've asked for that we're not able to do. Again, you'd have a lot of background to that, but I would have none to start with. So are there projects in the works that we're trying to do if we only had the funding for it?
I'm trying to think of an instance where we were not able to assist. Most of the requests that we've gotten have been fairly reasonable. I mean, we're talking about expanding their areas because they can't do business inside an enclosed area. We've offered the public right of way as a place for them to try to conduct their business.
So we're meeting their needs pretty much then, not meeting their needs as possible, meaning we don't have any money, so we're not meeting their needs, but we're actually meeting their needs as they're expressing them.
I think that's an accurate description. The public right of way has a value, and so they are utilizing that. So in a way, it's a cost to the city, but it's also beneficial to the city in order to keep the business afloat.
Yes, I understand that. I understand that. So basically, we're doing what we can, and if they can think of anything that we're not doing, they have yet to ask for it.
Well, I mean, some creative questions have come up. For example, we had I think it was the jiu-jitsu studio that backs up to parking lot number 8. They asked if they could use a couple of parking spaces to conduct outside classes because they couldn't do it on their State Street frontage. And so we allowed them to do that. There was another, a similar kind of a business that asked to borrow a few spaces on the roof of the garage. And so we do get some kind of creative ideas like that come up, and where we can accommodate them, we try.
Oh, maybe that was the kind of thing that Ruben was asking about too, about other uses for our spaces. Thank you, Victor.
Sure, you're welcome.
Well, thank you for those comments. I'd like to ask one of the question is, with the new bike share program, is there, like when we had the, we had the Granada Garage bike and the other one over on Figueroa, we were getting sort of reports and updates on how the bike share was using. Will we as a committee be able to get that information? Is the new company providing something to city? That would be good for us to kind of hear that.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we absolutely can do that. And B-Cycle, that's owned by Trek, will be giving us all the data on the use as we launch and how it's going. And we will be able to report that back to the downtown committee. I saw Victor take a note. The one thing to recognize about B-Cycle is that we did get an appeal in the coastal zone for the coastal zone permit, which is yet to go to council. I think it's scheduled for the 29th, might be bumped. And so that appeal process is delaying any access for bike share into the waterfront. So we've made the intentional decision to go ahead and launch in the downtown, and B-Cycle is looking for other locations around downtown so we can get the point to point. The bike share is meant to be a point to point service. It's not a rental service to just cruise around. It's actually you become a member, and then the first half hour is free always if you're a member. So you take the bike and you move to a destination, you dock it, and you're at your destination. You don't come back to the same dock, in other words. So just so the committee is aware, since you expressed interest, you're going to see the launch happen only above the freeway, and then once we get the permitting resolved for the coastal zone area, we'll expand down to the waterfront. The real good connection is going to be from the waterfront to the downtown. So that's a really valuable thing to have, and so we're looking forward to that too.
Thank you. Before I recognize you, Mr. Newkirk, do we have a time frame for that appeal? Do you have a horizon for that?
Well, as I said, the appeal is scheduled at council on the 29th. We've had some highly impacted council meetings recently. Last Tuesday went beyond 11 p.m. and we didn't get through the entire agenda. So we're having some challenges with that. So we're working with that. My estimation is that the appellant that is working on this, even if council decides to uphold or to deny the appeal, it can be appealed also to the coastal zone, coastal commission. And so that's probably a 3-month, I've been told 3 months before that would get resolved. So We could, at this current pace, we're probably looking at June because of the appellant.
All right, thank you. Mr. Newkirk.
Thanks, Chair Pinner. So Rob, you just answered my second question, was whether some of this was in the appealable jurisdiction. So that's too bad. I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot to try to paraphrase the appeal, but what is the argument? What's the concern that we're being faced with here?
Mr. Chair and Committee Member Newkirk, it's a great question. So the concern from the appellant is a couple different things, and I'm not gonna be able to get all of them right. But overall, they did not like or think that the Planning Commission had the ability to give a blanket or a programmatic approval. In other words, we cannot predict based on the demand for bike share where every single rack is going to go and not go. And as a matter of fact, once we put one in, if the demand is not there for that particular rack or dock, we don't want to leave it there. We want to be able to move it around so that the system can be adjusted for the need. And so therefore we asked the Planning Commission for a programmatic approval rather than spot locations, approve individual locations. We just said, hey, anywhere in the street right of way in the coastal zone. The appellant did not like that. And then, you know, some of the other things were process related regarding the Historic Landmarks Commission and the Architectural Board of Review approvals. So we just, you know, there's a process and we're going through it. And we want it to happen, but it's, you know, sometimes the appeal process can also mean for the public not getting exactly what they want right away.
Not to get too deep into the weeds, can those bike shares be located on private property in the coastal zone?
Mr. Chair, they can, although I think the challenge we were having with the Coastal Commission staff is they do believe that a bike share dock does need a coastal development permit. We didn't agree with that. You know, we install bike racks all the time without a coastal development permit. It's completely consistent with the local coastal plan. But they felt like they did need a CDP. So if you do have a private location, you're probably going to have to go through that process, which means a trip to the Planning Commission.
All right, thank you very much. Any other questions of staff for this item? Great, hearing none, I think we will move on to item number 8.
Okay, Mr. Chair and committee members, this item is all about the State Street Subcommittee. So the State Street Subcommittee is made up of 3 council members, Harmon, Sten, and Oscar Gutierrez. That committee has been assigned to come up with a vision for the future of State Street. They've also been engaged in the flexible and nimble during the emergency ordinance. And as Mr. Garza mentioned, and thank you for the compliments, Mr. Chair, of his amazing staff, they have been the yeomen here in that they are constantly responding to the business needs to keep them afloat. Committee Member Silver also asked that question, and Victor has countless stories of where we've come through for businesses and we're able to do stuff so that they could stay open, which is our goal. Be open, be safe. So the 2 things that the subcommittee talked about at its last meeting, and we're going to be talking about at its next meeting, which is 2 Mondays from today, is the expansion of the guidelines, the parklet guidelines, the State Street guidelines. I don't know, probably Sarah's keeping track, but she will tell you that we have changed the guidelines probably over 20 times. And the reason we change them is we're flexible and nimble as things come up. We created a guideline that you can just go ahead and put in a parklet. You can put it in on State Street. The whole goal was not to create a bureaucratic process, just get open. So as we move away from that first date, which was early last year, March 22, we now are changing the guidelines. And as Mr. Garza mentioned, alluded to in that, is the subcommittee is interested in the changing of the guidelines from an aesthetic standpoint now. So before, we have not been concerned about aesthetics as much. We've just been concerned about safety and functionality. Now we're going to move into aesthetics. And the transfer, the thing for the committee to think about is, we were at temporary. Last year was temporary, and now we're moving into what we're calling interim. And interim's probably a 3-year period. The pots on State Street, you may have seen, we're taking the construction feel out to a more permanent feel. It's still going to be interim, but it'll feel more like it's intentionally done. The pots have wonderful agave. Mr. Garza's crew have been working on that project. It's going to be, we're already getting rave reviews on the pots, which is great. So the committee wants to see the guidelines for parklets move to more of aesthetic value. We worked with a team of architects from AIA, Anthony Grumbine from the Historic Landmarks Commission, and Kaz Enberg, and some really good volunteers. We walked the streets with them, and they've come up with some aesthetic nudges to get to the next level. And they include what sort of elements we want to see on the parklets. So no horizontal elements, more vertical elements, more iron. If it's wood, it's got to be painted. And then as one of the things that's happening as businesses are closed, restaurants are closed, is they're thinking about how do I adjust my parklet or put out a new parklet so that it can be covered and protected when the state does open, that I can be in full operation. So we talked about how coverings should look. One of the main points with that is that they do not actually think the coverings are aesthetically right. So while we're still going to allow coverings, we're putting Mr. Garza's team is adjusting the guidelines to notice businesses that in the future coverings will not be allowed. So when will that happen? That will happen when the businesses get fully open, and we're fully open and everyone can operate inside. A restaurant could operate inside. That's the moment where we'll say, okay, we're not going to have coverings over the parklets anymore. So we're writing the guidelines, revising the guidelines again to demonstrate, hey, make sure that if you do a covering, that it's convertible, that you can remove it, and you can adjust to that future time, which we don't know when it is, that you will not have a covering. So we're right in the midst of changing those guidelines, as Mr. Garza alluded to. And then the second thing that the committee is talking about right now is, what is that vision for State Street? What do we think it is? And the way they've gotten there is actually through this committee. We have interviewed now over 200 board and commission members for their individual perspective on what State Street should do in the future. Why should it be redesigned wholesale? If it is redesigned wholesale, what will it look like in the future? And then why is it important? And you've participated in answering that question. And what Jason Harris, the economic development manager, myself have done is we've distilled down all those notes to some key themes that we've heard, notes that keep getting hit by people again and again and again and again. And so we're going to present the committee with 2 Mondays from today those key themes, and we're going to ask them to start crafting a vision statement for downtown based on those key themes. We also have been doing surveys, citywide surveys. We're almost at 4,000 surveys citywide. We are also, Victor Garza's team of ambassadors are actually out there with iPads on the street. We have a different survey for face-to-face on the street. And we're going to take those surveys and we're going to put them side by side, the themes, and show the committee where there's strong relationship or not. So that's how we're using the surveys. And so those two things, Mr. Chair and committee members, they're managing the parklets, the interim improvements that we're putting up right now, and the vision for State Street. The next step after the committee that vision will be forwarded to the city council for their review, and then we anticipate that the council will initiate a formal capital improvement project and process to develop that project for State Street, possibly the side streets and the area of downtown. So a lot of exciting things happening and coming out of what was a very devastating time. And we're at the forefront of it, and really, really glad to have you, Mr. Chair, as a liaison there to hear, and I'm sure the committee members are interested in your view of the last meeting. So I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. Dayton. I was going to say that we did appoint the chair and the vice chair as liaisons to this subcommittee, and we did attend virtually, of course, the last meeting. And I will echo Mr. Dayton's excitement of what's going on with this committee. I do want to let everyone know that I was very pleased that when we announced to the subcommittee that downtown parking has officially sort of adopted a liaison to go to this meeting, they were very energetic, thankful, and appreciative of our wanting to be a partner with them in this project. So I was just very pleased with their smiles and their approval of our getting involved with them. So we want to be there for them to help them. As Mr. Dayton said, that the survey is going, I think, till January 31st. So I would encourage every member on this committee to go to, if you Google Future State Street Santa Barbara, it'll get you to that web page. And there's a survey on there. So please go ahead and take that. The other take back I took from the meeting, Mr. Dayton, was the this starting to morph into the longer term view as opposed to the panic view of the parklets and how they look. I had a note here of no AstroTurf. That's I took away the clear understanding that AstroTurf is not to be used. But you know, Santa Barbara does work hard to keep a architectural style, and I appreciated the committee's work in hearing what works and doesn't work, understanding the concern of the expense for someone putting into originally a very temporary structure. Now, how temporary, how long is unclear. So there's definitely a balancing effort that they're trying to obtain between those two things. So I look forward to the next meeting, and as you say, in 2 weeks. There is for all of you on the committee, there is a completely separate website or city page that has all this information. I would encourage you to go there. You can look at the archives of all the meetings and get the minutes just like you can for our meetings. So I encourage you to do that. So I'm just excited about it and look forward to continuing to be involved and report back. I'll ask if Mr. France, who also joined that meeting, if he has any other comments or questions, and if not, happy to open up to the rest of the committee.
Thank you, Chair Pinner. I'll just echo the sort of focus on design standards. I was actually a little bit concerned that the State Street Subcommittee presentation was actually slightly outside of the agenda item and their purview. So to be honest, it needed to be more focused. Yeah, that's kind of the balance. I think that it's really tricky in a temporary state with the State Street redesign happening and with all of the kind of practical considerations, the level of detail they went into for temporary design standards. To be honest, it didn't fully make sense to me.
I understood. Yes, they had a lot of detail there. I will say just one other thing. I think a lot of this is like a snowball and how steep the hill is. We've started a snowball by the pandemic, and how fast that snowball gets rolling, what it picks up on the way, what it damages on the way down the hill, what it enhances on the way down the hill, and what we end up with is very interesting. So I think we're at the very beginning of this snowball development. But Mr. Dayton, you had a comment, then I know Mr. Newkirk wanted to say something.
No, I'm just here to help.
I'm going to recognize Mr. Newkirk first. If he could go ahead and turn on his camera. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Penner. So question for Rob. In terms of these interim design guidelines, standards, whatever we're going to call them, what's the process for the review, and are they going to be adopted? Like, how is this actually going to become the enforced expectation?
Thank you for that question. I really love that, Committee Member Newkirk, because right now we haven't had the approval process. So the adoption is all on Paul Casey's authority. He's the city manager. So when we adopt a new guideline, every iteration, we adopt it under the emergency ordinance. The city manager has been given the authority to make those judgment calls. So he and the city engineer approve the guidelines. And then the one adjustment that maybe you're alluding to that we're making is now there's going to be a little bit of an approval process. So the new guidelines will say, hey, check in. They'll have Victor Garza's number and his email. And we just want to see a little bit about what you're planning on so we can make little adjustments, make sure that they are somewhat complying with the aesthetic intentions, and then that they are complying with the accessibility. Accessibility is one of the major concerns we have, and we've been in an enforcement process now. It's a little bit harder to do under the lockdown because restaurants are not active now. But we want to make sure that these parklets are accessible to all people, and so the guidelines include those accessibility standards. So that's how we're moving forward.
Yeah, and I'm thinking more about these new aesthetic requirements and going into this interim. So are these new guidelines, because 3 years doesn't strike me as that would fall under the emergency declaration, and these are we're talking more than about like ADA requirements, which are actually like, present requirements. And I'll couch that with, like, to me, it's concerning that these aesthetics that may be in place for several years would be implemented without much of a public process. And from my perspective, I think a 3-year time period is a great amount of time to explore different aesthetic qualities that maybe don't fit in with the historic architecture. I mentioned before, like, just juxtaposing kind of the Spanish Revival with other design elements. Even before, hearing the summary here, I was thinking of Dune coffee roasters on the 1100 block. It's like plywood and magenta paint. I can't imagine a design guideline scenario where that would be appropriate. But to me, that's the most interesting parklet on the block. And some people might dislike it, some people might like it, but I imagine a lot of people think about it. And to me, that's like a really good quality of the streetscape, especially in a temporary form. And then, like, that can inform us in the long-term vision of State Street is how do we want to incorporate on-street design elements with the historic architecture. So to me, kind of doing this, like, kind of more strict, compatible with the existing development design guidelines without much of a public process that may last for 3 years is really a wasted opportunity. So I guess I'd like to hear, I'm commenting certainly here that I hope the subcommittee considers that, but to me, like, how can we, I guess I'll ask the question, how can we incorporate more of that flexibility into this interim period and use that as a learning tool and as opportunity to support artistic expression in a way that maybe we haven't seen on State Street, and this can be an opportunity to do that.
Okay, thank you, Committeemember Newkirk. So first thing is, with the guidelines, we'll have a public process eventually. And then I would say, and so I'll get into that, but the balance is in 3 years, we anticipate everyone's going to have to yank it all up for a construction project. So the balance is to have a process that fits within the cost and time frame of the interim period. So the council is going to be reviewing the emergency ordinance at the end of February. We think they're going to extend it till June. So that's the emergency ordinance will probably be active until June. And then you're absolutely right. When the emergency ordinance is over, we're going to have a more formal process for the adoption of the guidelines moving forward. That will be a public process that will include members of the Historic Landmarks Commission and public participation. I can tell you the tone that we're already hearing is, get the parklets back in line with the El Pueblo Viejo. So I don't think fuchsia is probably going to be in our future, but who knows? Who knows? And with the right participation, maybe there will be something more creative. And then, the long-term goal is how do you, what is the future of the street that's going to be there? That community process, in terms of longevity, is going to be really vital to make sure that the communities is heard in terms of what they want to see on their street.
Thank you, Mr. Day. And Committee Member Silvers, you had a question or comment?
I would say my question got asked and got answered. I would only ask that with the accessibility features, can those be monitored by the State Street ambassadors once things are up and running, so it isn't complaint driven? Because complaint driven seems to me defeating. So that's my suggestion.
Yeah, we do have the ambassadors out there looking at that. Committee Member Silver, we have a whole host of team. Victor Garza's got lots of people looking at this. It is always going to be a balance between what we see and complaints. There's just no way around it. Especially with
I understand that. I would just like to push the balance in a more favorable direction.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it's hard to tell as a member of the public what's going on. Like, you might see a problem and you might think, how come that problem's not fixed? And a month might go, and how come that problem's not fixed? And the challenge is that we have to go through a process of notification with a business. So what you don't see is what Mr. Garza is doing behind the scenes of notifying people and giving them opportunity to change it before, and then having the attorney's office come off before we start, fining and doing things like that. So, but it is always going to be a combination of us seeing things and taking action, and members of the public who are visiting these restaurants saying, hey, they're not in compliance. And things shift every single day, particularly with tables on those parklets. So, some days someone can be in compliance and other days they can't because the tables are being moved around every day. And that person that lays the tables may not even know what accessibility standards are. And so that's the challenge.
Well,
for all of us.
that's one of the issues that I would like us to be more proactive, educating the folks who are on the front line. I realize they don't know. Well, why don't they know? That's the question. Why don't they know? So thank you.
All right. Thank you. With that, I would like to open public comment on this item. So Sarah, if you could open up public comment, please.
Okay, so any member of the public who wishes to speak on this item, go ahead. Use the raise your hand button in GoToWebinar. And I am not seeing any hands raised.
Thank you. At that time, we'll close public comment for item number 8. Are there any additional questions or comments by staff or the committee on this item? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move to item number 9, appointment of chair and vice chair. Mr. Newkirk, you just were there and you disappeared.
One final comment for the State Street Subcommittee is I think these are really important discussions that subcommittee is having. And I think I've said this at the last meeting, I'll say it every meeting. I think it would be appropriate to have those in the evening when other perspectives may be available to attend.
Thank you.
I could pass that comment along to Mr. Harris, and we could. Their work is almost done, but yes, it would be more favorable in the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Labrie.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if there was a presentation or lead into this, but I wanted to jump the gun here and thank you and Mr. France for your leadership. And I'm assuming we've already moved to item number 9. I would like to move that the committee approve the 2 of you serving in your current capacity for another term, if you and Mr. France are willing. I know there's a lot of extra work, and I really appreciate the job that you guys have done. So I would make that motion with you and Mr. France's agreement.
Will we have a first for a motion for myself to remain as chair and Mr. France to remain as vice chair? Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion and just comment that Member Labrie kind of beat me to the punch, but I think you guys have done a great job, especially as we've gone remote and kind of retooling how we do these meetings. I think you in particular, Chair Pinner, have kind of led us well over the last year. So I'm really appreciative of all the work both of you have done.
Well, I thank you both for those comments, and I appreciate the first, the movement, and the second of the motion. I will say I greatly appreciate the comment from Chairperson Labrie, who has served in the role of chair of this committee for many years. So I appreciate his acknowledgement and understanding of the role. And I am willing and happy to serve and continue to serve in the role of the chair. But I want to say before I move it over to Mr. France, if he has any comments, my smoothness, if you see it that way, of operating in the role of chair is really more of a reflection of staff and their hard work. I can't do what we do here in these roles of chair and vice chair without their tremendous commitment to serving this committee. So I thank you for the vote of confidence that you feel it's been going well, especially during this difficult time, but it's been a very much a team effort. So I am, in response to that, I'm certainly willing to accept the continuation of my role, and I'll open it up to Mr. France if he feels the same way.
I do, Chair Pinner, and I'd just like to thank you for chairing us and being the captain of our team, especially as we've gone through this whole pandemic ordeal and significant stress to the downtown economy and the downtown parking system. I want to appreciate the addition of Barbara Silver and Ruben Zarate. Welcome. And I would certainly support you leading us again. I'd be happy to serve as your vice chair. I think this year ahead is going to be really important for us to support our staff team that's working pretty tirelessly to deal with a very, very challenging situation.
Thank you, Chairperson Silver. I mean, Chairperson, I just made you the Chairperson, Committee Person Silver.
Well, because of watching the meetings online and seeing how they were run, that's why I considered applying for the committee. Otherwise, I would never have considered it. So thank you again for the way you do things.
I appreciate that. Well, it appears that we've had, is there any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll move for, almost caught me, Sarah. Thanks for popping on.
It's okay. You get to the end. I know how it goes.
Is there any public comment regarding item number 9?
I don't see any public comment at this time.
Thank you very much. Okay, with any further comments or questions on the motion, we'll call for the question, please.
Committee Member France,
Yes.
Mr. Zarate,
Yes.
Mr. Newkirk,
Yes.
Ms. Silver,
Yes,
Mr. Labrie,
Yes.
and Chair Pinner.
I vote yes. Well, thank you, committee, for that appreciative vote of confidence. But again, it really is, I only wish the nomination or the continuation of chair came with a magic wand, and somehow I could use that magic wand to fix so many of our issues that we're dealing with in the city and in our communities around the state and around the nation. So unfortunately, it doesn't come from with a magic wand. It just comes from a hope of good effort that our committee can do some good work that we're trying to do here in the city to make it a more viable, our economics more successful, and our citizens happier. So we'll try to do that. And thank you very much.
And I'd just like to say thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for Committee Member Libby, Bree, and France for all of you stepping up and being such great collaborative leaders with our team, particularly through such a time as this. It's been invaluable for us. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to another year of strategic changes and adjusting to what we are hit with to be successful. So thank you very much.
So I'll leave this item with a hope, and I hope that the next time we have to vote to appoint a chair and vice chair next year, that we will not be doing this virtually, and that we will have that opportunity to do that in person. So let's hope that that's the case. With that, we'll move to item number 10. Any announcements?
Mr. Chair, the only announcement I already alluded to was that the pots are going in and the bollards are also on order. The pots are being filled with the plants. The green lanes will be painted. All of this will be completed by February. So you'll see a new look on the street. That's our announcement.
Excellent. I just want to add to that a reminder, really kind of on the State Street Subcommittee, that please, if you are interested in those items, please participate in those meetings. And then if you aren't able to participate in the meeting, as Mr. Newkirk mentioned, if you can't make it during the time frame, if there is something of issue that you would like addressed, please bring that attention to myself or Mr. France. And as the liaison, we will attempt to bring your comments, concerns. So don't feel you have to do it solely on your own. Bring it, let us know if you have an issue, and we will try to address that with that State Street Subcommittee in that fashion. So that's an important effort. It's probably, I mean, I have to say, it's probably the biggest effort that I can think of in my 3 years here in Santa Barbara. I think it's one of the biggest landscape altering issues. So it's going to be some heavy lifting. So let's hope it goes well. So thank you. With that, if there's anything else from staff, we will move to item number 11, which is adjournment. So thank you all. Happy New Year to you. And as I say, I hope before this year ends or soon thereafter, we are able to meet in person. So be well, be safe, and we'll see you at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.